Hey guys, a couple of things I wanted to point out that have started to come in so far on the assignments. I wanted to make things a little easier if you're um, just getting started on Tech Project 1 and 2, or if you've already done them and you want to give it another shot before the due date, you can still resubmit. But one thing that's been kind of missed a bit so far and was pointed out is that the example image on the assignment page misses one critical step. And I don't want to say it's not my fault, but I didn't make the image, but I didn't catch it either. So it is my fault. Anyway, I wanted to point out the horizon. You're supposed to straighten the horizon in this image. And so if I drag down a ruler from the top here in Photoshop to that water line, you can see that it's not straight, right? We need to get that thing straightened out. And so that leveling step was missed. To do that, we're going to use the crop tool. So I'll just hit C to turn on the crop tool. We see the little crop shield there. And then there's a ruler up at the top. You guys already probably saw this. And some of you, I think, straightened it, but just didn't straighten it based on the right area. So click on the ruler to straighten. And then all you have to do is drag a line across what you want to be leveled horizontally. And that, in this case, is the horizon. And so we're going to use the water line. That's what's important here. Don't click on the beach because there's a slant. The beach raises in elevation. We want to go with the water line. That's pretty much as level as you can get in a natural environment. So click and drag on that. And now that horizon's leveled. We'll just apply that crop, and that's not the whole assignment, but that's that part of it. Make sure that you do that because the example image that's posted on the assignment page, it's not leveled there. So if you're trying to make yours just match visually to that instead of actually following the steps of the assignment, you might miss something. So there you go. All right, next up, Tech Project 2, I wanted to just point out a couple of things. Now, Photoshop has been around for a long, long time. It's older than probably most of you in this class. And there's been a lot of stuff added to it, and they constantly keep adding things to it. One of those more recent additions will save you a ton of time on this particular assignment. It's not in the assignment instructions, but how you mask something out is totally up to you. And so I'm going to let you do it your way, but I want to show you like a really quick and easy way to at least get started on this project. So to do this, you'll need to open up the properties panel. Actually, there's like 7 different ways you can do this. This is just one of them. Anyway, if you go to the properties panel, you'll see that one of the quick actions that's there is select subject and remove background. And I'm just going to click remove background because that's what we're doing here. We've got the car on top of the garage and ta-da, like you look at this, we're 90% of the way done. It's not complete. So if you're doing this step, don't think, wow, I just clicked one button and I'm done. But that gets you a lot of the way closer. We can look over in our layers panel. We've got a nice mask, this little black rectangle with a white outline of the car inside of there. That's a layer mask. And you guys should know this from the reading and so on already. But if you don't, or you need a refresher, if we turn on the paintbrush tool, I'm just going to make a little bit bigger brush with the paintbrush tool. See, moving around there. And if I have black as my color that's selected for the paintbrush tool, if I paint with black, it's going to hide it. I'm not actually erasing any pixels. It's completely non-destructive. But if you look at the thumbnail over on the right, watch that thumbnail while I paint some more. I'm painting out that car. And all it's doing is it's making a mask here. This black thumbnail is a mask that's hiding the pixels of my layer 1. I don't want to do that, so I'll click undo, Control Z a couple of times. Let's get back to where I was after I hit that remove background button. Now the mask is fantastic because that lets us work non-destructively. If I'd use the eraser tool or some other destructive way of doing this, I couldn't fix any mistakes and it'd be really difficult to clean things up. And using that remove background button does require you to do some cleanup work. It's not perfect. So I'm just going to zoom in up here on the top of the hood and see that it's pretty pixelated. It's pretty fuzzy on that edge, right? So I want to clean that up, but I'm just going to use the brush tool to do it because it's easy and I'm lazy. So I'll use the brush tool, make it a little bit smaller. I'm using the right and left brackets on the keyboard to make that bigger and smaller. I want to right click and I'll check the hardness. I want this to be a hard, crisp edge. So when I paint with that, it's going to cut things out crisply. Let's undo that. Now, if I need to clean stuff up, if the button, the one-click button cut out too much or it didn't cut out enough, I can clean that up a couple different ways. First, black conceals. So if I want to erase something, I use black. White reveals. So if I want to add stuff back in that should be there, I'll use white. And I can switch between those by pressing X on the keyboard. It's going to switch between the black and white. Look down over here at my foreground and background colors. X is going to toggle those around. So let's just switch to white real quick. And I'm going to paint back in some of that edge that got a little fuzzy. And I can try to just paint a nice straight line here by clicking and dragging. But sometimes it's not totally straight. I don't draw very straight. Natural tendency. Instead, if I want to make a straight line, I'll just do it up here real quick so you can see. I'm going to click once and let go of the mouse. And then I'll put my cursor over at the other end of where I want to go, then press Shift on the keyboard and click one more time. And it's going to connect the dots. It's going to draw a straight line between those 2 points. So let's undo that and use that on the hood here. I'll click once right here. And then I'll go over here somewhere where it's pretty much straight between those 2 points. Hold down Shift, click the next point. And then I can space bar and drag over a little further down, press Shift again. It's going to connect those dots one more time. Same process, repeat it over and over. And every time I click Shift and add that, it's going to take care of it. Now, I'm working with low res files, so it's going to be pixelated. That's okay. I just want to make sure that I'm getting as good of an edge as I possibly can. Now, I went a little further than I needed to with that white paintbrush because I wanted to make sure I wasn't cutting out part of the edge of that hood, or if my button click earlier hadn't gotten rid of that. So now I'll switch back to black and clean this up. So same thing, I'll just click once right about there, and then bring cursor over here again and Shift, click over there. And it's probably not much different from where it started out because, again, it's a low-res image, but that's the process. Now, if you wanted to just mask out the whole car that way, that's fine. But just double check things. There will be areas you'll need to clean up no matter what. So here again, I'm going to switch back to my white paintbrush and just make it a little bit bigger because I know that some of the back trunk of this car got chopped out. So I'm just going to paint, make sure that I get the whole edge of the back of the car in there with a white brush. Then I can switch to black and I can come in here and just paint out. I was about to say erasing, but you're really, when you use layer mask, you're not erasing. It's non-destructive. So again, I'm probably not drawing a super straight line there. Try to be more precise maybe when you're doing it, but that's the idea. Just switch between black and white until you get all those edges all cleaned up and looking good. So zoom in about like this, go around, check all the edges. See that tire got a little notched. I'm going to just have my white paintbrush paint in the edges of that tire. There's a little bitty spot right there that shouldn't have been. So I take the black brush and I'll just paint that little notch out. Look around here underneath. There's a little bit right there that didn't get cut out that probably should have. So again, still my black paintbrush. I'll just come in and paint that little bit out. Looks like it got the tread of the car, the tire in there and everything, but I'll just clean up little bits of stuff that I think shouldn't be sticking out, but ended up being there. Now right here, there's a little more cleanup. So again, just come in, take your time, paint out those little pixels, and without going around doing the whole car, I think you get the idea, right? So just walk your way around, make sure you've got all the edges looking good. Now, to finish this up real quick, the last thing I need to think about is the windows in the car. Those windows are problematic because the original photo that the car came from, you've got clouds, but in the composite scene, it should be a garage showing through those windows. So we could do the same thing. Let's zoom in here, switch back to my paintbrush tool. And if I just use a paintbrush and erase that out, then yeah, I'll see garage through the windows of that car. There's some problems with that though. One is that glass has reflections. Let's look here at this area right there. You can see that there's glass in front of that. You've got kind of a bluish reflection on that glass. And same thing over here. You can see there's glass there. And then in this area, I mean, we see that there's this side panel of glass, and then there's the rear bit of glass in the back of that car. So really, we should be looking through 2 sheets of glass before we see any of the garage back there. That means we need to do a little bit more precise work here than we were before with just cutting out the edges with the car. So the way I would do this is same thing. I'm just going to work with my layer mask, this little rectangle over here. Make sure that you're not clicked on the layer itself, or when you use the paintbrush, it's going to paint on top of those pixels. Click on the layer mask, If you want to see what that layer mask looks like at any time, hold down the Alt or Option key on your keyboard and click on it. And it's going to show you the mask, and you can see, oh, you know what? I didn't notice that, but there's some stuff up there that I need to clean up. So switch over to the brush tool. Let's just clean that bit up, and that bit looks okay too. I don't even need to see the actual pixels of the image to know that some stuff needs cleaned up. That's the rear view mirror sticking out, or the side mirror. That needs cleaned up. Okay, and you can look for those jagged edges or blurry edges anywhere this way too, but we'll go back, press Alt, click on layer 1, and let's get back into our regular view. Now looking at those windows, remember, black conceals, white reveals. With our paintbrush tool, though, we've got more than just black and white to choose from. We've got all these layers of gray as well. So if black is going to hide something 100%, white's going to show it 100%, then 50% gray is going to do a little bit of both, right? So if I put it on gray and paint on my mask, you can see that it leaves a little bit of that image showing through. And if you look really close, there's still like an image of clouds there and stuff, and nobody's going to notice, at least not on this assignment. That's okay. But if you kind of make that a little bit transparent on that glass, then you'll be doing pretty good. Let's speed the process up, though, by making a selection first. I'm going to hit W to turn on the magic wand. I'll hit it a couple times. Depending on the way your preferences are set up, you may have to hit Shift W to toggle between those tools. But I'm looking for this one. This is the Quick Select tool. And I'm just going to drag a little rectangle around there. It's not working great because there's such low resolution. I lied. I'm not going to use the Quick Select tool. Let's use the Polygonal Lasso tool, this one right here. This lets us draw straight lines just by connecting the dots again. I can't ever draw a straight line, so anything that lets me connect the dots is great. So I'll click once in that corner. I'll click here in this corner, and then down there, the top of the seat back. Same thing over here. It may not be really precise. Don't judge. All right. And then I've got this nice little rectangle kind of thing drawn there already. Switch back to my paintbrush tool. Keyboard shortcut B. I'm still on that gray. And I'll just paint that in. I don't have to be precise or anything because I made the selection around it already. Then I can deselect this. Control or Command D will deselect it. And I can move on to the next bit of selection that I want to make. So what I'm going to do is do all of the parts of glass that are 50% gray is the paint that I'm going to use. Let's look here. See, we've got black, white, and then gray right here. That means it's partially hidden, but not completely. And I just need to think logically about what parts of the window should be 50% masked out. And that's going to be down here on the seat. See, we've got one sheet of glass in between the seat and the background. So we'll just come in here. Same thing as before, make a little selection. The Polygonal Lasso tool does great for straight lines, but it's actually really easy to do curved lines too. You just click into little sections, and every curved line in Photoshop is still made up of square pixels, right? So anyways, we've got that. Switch back to the brush tool, paint that out. Okay, now we've got a little bit of a kind of a reflection haziness there from that sheet of glass. We're good. Okay, well, we're still in that same shade of gray. Let's look at where else we've got to do this too. Switch back to the lasso tool. Let's go right here. Let's get this bit. Okay, and I could continue on with this for a little bit too. I don't need to do this forever, but I'm not going to worry about some of these areas. I probably shouldn't even be bothering with this part right here because technically it's still just one bit of glass in front of the background. But I'm going to do it anyways just because. So there we go. All right, let's call that good. And let's worry about like some of these other spots where there's actually two sheets of glass in front of the background. So if we want less to be hidden, we just need to change the color that we're painting with. This time I'm going to go a little bit more towards black. That's going to hide some more, or a little bit more towards white. That's going to show some more of the layer that we're painting on the mask. So I always get this wrong, and that's okay because there's undo button. So let's try and see this if I got it right. So if I paint on this area, that looks, I'm just looking at that little patch. I'm going to hit undo. But yeah, that's okay. So we'll hit undo. Now let's grab the lasso tool, come back down here. Let's make us another selection. Switch back to the brush tool, and we're painting with a lighter shade of gray, and it's going to hide or erase less of that foreground color. See? All right, so then you just continue on and do the same thing here. Now I'll do this last little bit in one step instead of two. I'm going to go ahead and make this little selection on the hair. Close enough for now. But I'm going to also need to paint on a couple of other areas, and so I'll do those all at once. This time I'm going to press Shift now. And see how there's a little plus next to the cursor? So Shift click is going to allow me to just do a couple of different areas of selection all at once. Okay, so now we've got both of those going on, and I'll come over here and let's do this little bit too. Shift click, make sure you start by pressing Shift. Okay, and I'm just clicking a few times close together. I want to keep that little bit of a window edge there, I guess. So this is the most time-consuming part of the project, because the other part you just hit a button, right? Anyway, this is probably boring to watch. You've got the idea, I hope, at this point. But I would go through and do the rest of this windshield too. You know, get these other parts. You know, grab this Shift click over here. Let's grab that little triangular section of windshield and side window. Okay, and so those are all going to be the same thing because there's two layers of glass there. We want to use that same shade of light gray. We'll switch back to the brush tool. Let's just paint over that and that. Paint over that. And over that. So we see a little bit of garage back there, right? Deselect, and then finally to finish this off, there's just the windshield here. The driver's side window is rolled down. You can tell with the color of the original image in the background there. So I'm going to come in and I'll just ignore that little window antenna sticking up. I'm going to go ahead and mask right through it for now. Let me just make this selection on that rearview mirror. Again, it just makes straight lines with this tool, but if you have a curve, you just make that by making several short straight lines. I'm just clicking repeatedly to go around the bend here of the steering wheel. Okay. All right, now brush tool, let's switch, and we need to switch our color back because again, this is just one layer of glass, so we need to go right back down to around the middle. For this particular image, it's not that scientific where you have to be super precise. I'm not too worried about that. All right, let's get that, deselect, finish up here. I'm just going to make my brush way smaller rather than trying to mask out this underside area of the steering wheel. We'll just paint out those bright pixels so that it matches. Okay. My brush is so small, it's on the pixel level, so we'll clean up the edge there. You know, there's probably some more cleanup that I should be doing, but I want to get this finished so you guys don't have to keep watching. You can get to work. All right, let's fix the antenna now, but it really looks, I mean, there's the other lighting issues and shadow issues. It's not a perfect composite. There's color casts, but as far as the glass, being able to see through to the background of this car now, that makes it a lot more realistic sitting in the garage, you know, in terms of the masking. So color is something we'll get to later on, but I just want to fix this little antenna here. So I'm going to grab my brush tool again. It's on a really small size, but this time I want it to be black. Oh, I'm sorry, I wanted it to be white because I wanted to show the car 100% in just that one little area. So I'll come down to the bottom. Maybe hard to see my cursor. It's super tiny. Right down here to the bottom of that antenna. I'm going to click once, and then I'm going to come up to the top up here, shift click, and click again. And that's just going to paint back in that antenna right there. And then I know it also probably goes a little higher, so Let's make that brush a little bigger. See where that actually ends, because the one-click button in the properties panel, it chopped off the top of that antenna. Now that I see that it's there, I want to get that back. So we'll switch back to our default black and white colors by pressing D on the keyboard. That gives us black and white over here. There's buttons for these too. You just click these buttons right here to go to default or to switch. So what I want to do is switch back to black and then paint out all those scribbles that I added, but keep the antenna sticking up top there. All right, and I'm just going to do it quick and kind of messy so we can be done, and you guys can do this to make it all perfect and pretty on your own, okay? All right, there you go. So that's the masking portion of this assignment, the easy version. If you're using the pen tool or some other tool, you're welcome to use whatever way of making the selections and masking that you want. But the end product should be nice and clean. It should have no fuzzy edges, more so than just the pixelation of the low-res graphics to begin with. And you should take care of the glass. So make sure you're watching for the glass there in those windows, and you have it partially hidden and partially masked out. If you're using a destructive tool like the eraser or something, it's going to be really impossible to do this. You have to use a layer mask and work non-destructively. All right, so have fun, and let me know if you guys have any questions.